members across the world dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. This interview is with Steve Burson of Relo Network Asia. It was recorded on the 9th of April, so as I always say, it's possible that some of the information may be superseded. Please bear with us, the audio is not great on this recording. The internet was not our friend today, but it's a great interview nonetheless. Hello and welcome back. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to Steve Burson, CEO, Relo Network Asia. I know that most of you watching this will know Steve. Steve and I've known you for a long time, and it's a real pleasure to see you. We've been communicating and you're not where you're meant to be.
No, not exactly. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Don, for having me on. I travel a lot, so I'm typically in between Singapore and Japan. But right now, I am stuck now. I made a decision a while back to just be here in Singapore and not move. Seemed to make sense, because I knew that things were probably going to be closed down on both ends, which they are. So, in terms of being here for our business here, it's probably the best place to be. It's not the greatest place for my for my family situation, but they're all safe and well in Japan, and we speak over the phone and through internet and Skype and everything. So it's fine.
I mean, it's just
there are lots of people in a worse off position, so I can't complain.
And I mean, obviously, because I know you say you have a base in Singapore as well as in Japan, so at least you're comfortable and settled. But it just must be so weird being away from the family.
It is a little bit. I mean, I'm away for 1 or 2 months periods, and now I've been away for 3 months or a little bit more, and it's probably going to be another couple of months before I can get back. So it's going to be a long way away. But as I mentioned, there's lots of people in worse positions than I am. So I'm just lucky to be here. I'm in a place in Singapore which is, compared to some other places in the world, probably one of the better places to be, I would imagine. Although restrictions have been important, a little bit more has been enforced recently, movement restrictions. But
yeah, because I mean, so Singapore at the beginning of the crisis handled this incredibly well. I mean, there was so much press about how fast they reacted and how well the city state had done. What's caused the ramping up of the new restrictions?
It's mainly, I mean, they've closed their borders to most foreigners coming into Singapore, so it's mainly their own people as they come back, and they were very, I guess, supportive of their own people and allowing them to come back. But it's those people that have brought back quite a lot of the virus, and then there's been clusters and things that have arisen that they can't trace anymore. They're not quite sure where it came from, that sort of thing. So they did a very good job firsthand of tracking every single case that where it came from, who might have been in touch with that person.
Wow.
So, they did a great job with that, but it wasn't enough.
Right. I mean, that's just such an enormous job. I mean, given that Singapore is one of the biggest airport hubs in the world, to do that kind of tracing, that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and of course, this is a place that sort of thrives on that, international travel coming in and out of here. So, for them to turn around and do what they did, so quickly, and now to completely close down, what they're known for. I mean, 96% of Singapore flights have been grounded, which is unheard of for them. I mean, and I live on the East Coast here, kind of near the airport.
Mm-hmm.
I go out to the walk along the beach on the East Coast, and typically you can see plane after plane after plane coming in, and landing at the airport. And now you see one every 30 minutes or an hour. So
that is surreal.
That is surreal.
Yeah, I can imagine. And what about, I mean, just given that point of view, thinking of being on the beach there, because I know where you were talking about, and again, you would normally see ship after ship after liner after container port. Is that still functioning?
The ships are still there. I'm not actually sure about how much of that is still functioning in terms of, although I don't think that side of trade and that sort of thing has been so much affected. And I'm not really, it's not really my speciality, so I'm not quite sure.
No, sure. I was just interested because you can see.
But yeah, so Singapore, but in terms, Singapore still allows people at the moment. The one thing they are allowing is for people to exercise, and so all their parks are still open, including East Coast Park, which is close to where I am. And so the only place you do see a lot of people right now is out in the parks. People have to maintain their distance and all that sort of thing, but they are still allowing that right now. Otherwise, they've shut all restaurants down for everything except takeaways.
Okay.
Everything else is closed. So being in the workplace is illegal unless it's an essential service. I'm allowed into our office because I'm the managing director and I can go down to do things like pick up mail and things like that, but I can't have any of my staff in the office. And they have just yesterday announced another sort of social distancing policy that you're not allowed to meet or congregate with anybody outside your own house. So
Okay.
I live by myself, so the only person I can meet for the next 3 weeks is myself. So if you were living with a family of 4, you could be with that family of 4. You could walk with them, or go to the park and play sports with them, or whatever. But you wouldn't be able to do anything with anybody else. And it's actually a law now that that's illegal. So if you get caught, there are some fairly decent fines for not obeying what they say. So
I had a T-shirt years ago. Singapore is a fine city, and all the things you could be fined for. I mean, and that will be that will be enforced, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yes, I don't know to what extent, but it will be enforced. And there has been cases of people, their visas being revoked and that sort of thing because they didn't obey the stay home policies or policies and got caught outside their home or whatever. So that they are taking it very, very seriously.
Yeah. Wow, interesting, very interesting. And from the point of view of, because you've got you're a multi-site operation.
Yes.
At what point did you have to start implementing your kind of I presume you had to do that earlier in Japan, remote working.
Well, funnily enough, Japan up until this week it's been mainly services as normal.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and Japan is now starting. We personally have been looking at having to work at home from 2 or 3 weeks ago. Not everybody, but people that were more comfortable with that. In Japan, but they've really only just a state of emergency announced for Tokyo on I think it's Monday.
Gosh.
This week, and actually that's only got 8 prefectures in Japan, so it's actually not all of Japan yet. Although they've just announced that our Nagoya office will probably be placed under state of emergency tomorrow, so that will close down the office there. So Japan's kind of been one of the last. Obviously China for us was first. Funnily enough, things in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, things are now starting to come back. So we're actually providing services in those 3 locations for people that are in country. Obviously, others can't. People can't travel in and out right now. But we do have people that are in country, or Hong Kong allows people to come in from China as long as they do the 14 days of quarantine.
Right.
So we've got a couple of 3 or 4 assignees right now who've nearly finished their 14 days of quarantine, and then we'll be helping them out next week. So it's kind of a weird sort of balancing sort of act.
It is, isn't it? Because again, given that you're multi-site across so many different countries, and the rules and regulations are just so different, as you say.
They are, yeah. So we have 17 countries that we provide services in, and so we have a rolling sort of status report that we update every day. Based on every location doesn't change every day, but we're trying to keep that as up date is possible. But a lot of our locations right now are in lockdown, like Malaysia or India or Singapore here as well. So it's not possible for us to provide services or even really go out and help anybody right now.
No.
So that it makes it a little bit more difficult. Obviously, we're doing everything we can to help people virtually with advice or information or whatever.
It's extraordinary how different things are. I mean, I'm sure it's more uniform in Europe. There are small changes in the rules, but this is the first time that I've spoken to anyone who said there is no possibility of meeting with anyone outside of your family. Here you can have groups of 2.
Right.
Most places in Europe it's groups of 5. But I mean,
Yeah.
I really feel for you. That's like, suddenly you can go for a walk, but you can't talk to anybody. That's harsh.
Right. Well, you can, but you just have to be a little bit further away. Yeah.
And what about things? You can go to the grocery store? Essential businesses are functioning and takeout is functioning?
Yes. So banks are open. Some of the restaurants are still open, but they're only allowed to do takeaway. They can't have people sit down or congregate in their restaurants. So they can only do takeaway. The food situation is this week has been it's okay. I mean, the shelves are half empty, but I mean you can get by. They're working on that. I think it'll come back. There's been a little bit of hoarding, and that's the thing. Is this new situation only really started this week.
Right.
So last week it was groups of 10. So 10 was the maximum. I go to the gym here. The gym was only allowed to have 10 people inside. So that was the policy for about 3 or 4 weeks, I guess. But obviously they couldn't bring the numbers down enough and had to go to the next phase. So they have. I think it's, I'm not sure what the phases are now: green, orange, red. I think it is. Phase orange right now.
Okay.
But I think we're right at this sort of the end of phase orange. So I don't really think there's much more they can do after this, other than complete, closing all parks and that sort of thing, which I guess is the next level. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that they've put that in place and that people are aware of it. I mean, most of people I'm talking to are saying, well, we don't really know what's happening next. In Singapore, they've just gone, we have 3 phases and, typically...
Right. Although we're not quite sure what they're going to do with the next phase. But, but they've been pretty good at communicating when they need to. Give a lot of advance notice, but, they give enough. So this last thing I think they announced last Thursday, Friday, and it was implemented on Tuesday. So they give people time. So
it's just so fascinating. I'm actually going to work with one of our intercultural trainers because the way that the laws are being implemented is quite similar, but the ways that people are dealing with the restrictions is incredibly different and incredibly cultural. I mean, I'm thinking of Singapore. It's a city that I love, and it's built on sociability. It's built on being in the hawker. It's built on being in the mall. It's built on it must be very odd to see the city empty of people.
Yes, and I guess I don't really get out any further than sort of my own neighbourhood. Go for a run or whatever, so I don't really get to go and see what the central city is like right now. But I imagine it's pretty desolate and not a lot going on. So that it is quite weird. It's quite weird to be out at 9 in the morning and there's hardly any traffic on the roads. It is what it is. We've got to do. We've got to do it.
We don't have any choices.
No.
I mean, like I say, we were saying you're very much a multinational, multi-site organisation. Are you starting to, within your contingency planning, is there government aid coming through in various places, Japan, Singapore, Myanmar?
Yes, there is. So we have employees right now in Hong Kong, China, Japan, obviously, here in Singapore, and also Malaysia. Right now, and I'm still working on this, there is some good support coming through from the Japanese government. So in Japan, they are supporting reduced work weeks. So there is, if you go to a reduced work week in Japan, you have to pay if you ask somebody to take a day off, with their wages, and the government is basically saying we'll pay that 6%. So we're looking at that right now in Japan. From May, we'll go to a 4-day work week split into 2 teams. That won't mean any difference for our clients in terms of business continuity, but we will be reducing people's work weeks. In Singapore here, they have just announced 75% coverage of wages up to, I think it is 4,600 Singapore dollars per month for the month of April. This period that they've just announced. So specifically for this 4-week period, which is very, very good government benefit. That's just for the month of April. They're then covering 25% for all subsequent months after that. So there's some pretty good available there. Hong Kong has also just announced something as well that we'll be able to use, be eligible for. So, basically most countries that I can see at the moment are turning around and saying, well, if you're employing people, we'll obviously these packages don't cover somebody like me or executive management and that sort of thing, but they can cover your local employees.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, yes, it's interesting how governments across the world seem to have gone down quite a similar route with that. Interesting. And is the onus on you to sort that out for your employees, or does it fall on the employees?
Well, Singapore is wonderful because everything's online, and basically they know exactly what you're paying your people,
right?
And they do all the calculating for you, and they put it in your bank account.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So they basically came out and said you don't have to do anything. Do this for you.
Wow.
The first payment comes in about a week, I think it is, or a week and a half. So it will just arrive in our company bank account. So whereas in Japan, it's completely the opposite. It's reams of paper that you have to fill out and all these sorts of things, and you have to prove that your revenue is not by so much.
Right.
All these sorts of things. So they really make it quite arduous for you to be eligible for these, and we don't quite know to what extent we're going to be eligible, but we'll just try applying as much as we can. So, I don't know about the other locations yet. I haven't.
Waiting for that to come in.
Quite sure what Hong Kong's going to be like or things like that. So.
That's really fascinating. I mean, certainly, what you're saying about Singapore, there's an awful lot of Euro members I've spoken to who are spending sort of 90% of their time trying to work through these governmental programs. That's kind of what half the management teams are doing right now. So, that's amazing in Singapore. And how are you staying positive? I mean, you're able to go out, be in the park. Is the sense that people in Singapore are coping well?
I think so. Yes, and I think they've been a lot of them have been very concerned about the situation. I mean, we've had a lot of our consultants not really that keen to go out and meet with our assignees and that sort of thing because they're not sure. So I think there's a genuine sort of level of concern in the community here. So I had, before we went to work at home, I had approached about I'd like to work from home from now on, which of course we accepted. I think there's they're taking this quite seriously, and I think they're coping quite well. The older generation maybe, because as you mentioned, there's a hawker centre sort of outside eating sort of culture here that is going to be tough for some people, I imagine. So but in general, I think things are working quite well.
Good.
And I think one of the better locations to be, I would imagine. I'm a little bit worried about Malaysia right now. Indonesia, some of these less developed locations, because they don't quite have the health systems and that sort of thing to take care of this properly, and not the same ability to do the social sort of separation that's required. So.
I mean, Singapore is an incredible society from that perspective. The infrastructure is extraordinary. The healthcare system is extraordinary, and so handling it really well. Listen, Steve, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. That's so insightful. I've learned an awful lot because, as I say, you know what's going on in various multiple locations, but it's been a real eye-opener. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'd love to come back to you in a few weeks' time.
Sure.
I was just going to ask you, I mean, you're going to stay put for right now. If you're able to repatriate in Japan, will you? I mean, is that not even possible right now? They're not doing.
I think at some point, but I think I'd like it to be at a point where it's sensible.
Yes.
Yeah. There's no point in rushing it, I don't think. So obviously I'd like to be back and see my family and that sort of thing, but I think we need to wait a little bit longer. Things have settled down.
It's like we've all got to do the right thing, and it may not be what you want to do, but it's the right thing, and it's extraordinary. Yes. Listen, it's really great to catch up with you. Thank you so much. Like I said,
thank you so much for the time.
Again in a few weeks, and in the meantime, take care and stay well and stay safe. And I hope you can continue to go to the park.
Yes, I will continue to exercise. Don't you worry.
See you soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks.